Welcome to Gaylord, 1 year later. It's been 365 days since a powerful EF3 tornado tore through this northern Michigan community. The past year has been filled with plenty of ups and downs. And over the next half hour, we're going to take a look back on the day the tornado touched down here in Gaylord, the recovery that's happened since, and what happens now. This was a storm that changed the lives of so many people here in Gaylord, and this is their story.
That's a tornado. That's coming right over here.
God, it's hitting us. Oh my God!
Jesus, please be with us.
The National Weather Service confirming just hours ago an EF3 tornado.
A tornado touching down in Gaylord late this afternoon.
A deadly EF3 tornado.
EF3 tornado.
The devastation is really hard to put into words. The destruction.
People that pitch in to help a neighbor. It's people that step up when things go bad. It's everything great about small town America.
Gaylord, Michigan, home to just over 4,000 people and affectionately known as the Alpine Village.
It is an attraction area. There's a lot of events. It's a tourist area, but the community seems to embrace that.
And that's where the Gaylord community found itself on the afternoon of May 20th, 2022, preparing for another busy spring weekend, even as storm clouds gathered.
It was at the height of activity in the town. The city's not really any busier at any time of the day than it was at that time.
Doppler 9 and 10 meteorologists Tom O'Hare and Michael Stevens had been tracking the possibility for severe weather on the 20th for several days.
Yeah, we got on the 3-day SPC outlook that, there was an opportunity for severe weather all the way up here in northern Michigan, which, late May, that's when we start seeing storms, but being that they were saying, yeah, there's a big risk in northern Michigan, it's like, okay, we'll see how this plays out. Because in the spring, it's very different from northern Michigan than, say, Oklahoma or Kansas or Illinois.
By 2 in the afternoon, the storm system started coming together.
And have an update here with a new severe thunderstorm warning.
And then we started to watch the winds.
Yeah, the winds aloft were,
oh my gosh.
Were something else. We say it a lot. You get all the warnings and watches, and even it breaks down to gut feeling even. But there was something very different about that day. And I don't say it, looking back. We were even here saying, man, it's weird outside because it's warm, it's windy. But the wind was so much faster aloft. So you hear the wind more than you feel the wind. It's just one of those days where you man, it's a weird day. If something's going to happen, today is that day.
Tom and Michael started seeing data that was cause for concern just 90 minutes later.
It's that combination, just saw that, and then that was going on. We didn't like that. And then as these storms started moving through, severe here, big hail.
Looked like straight line winds.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not right. There's something here. And he's like, yeah, we got to watch that closely. And then just within the next frame or two, moving northeast up towards Star Township, up towards Otsego County, then we saw the rotation. And then we're like, uh-oh, we have something here. And as it was updating, you could just see the tightening. You could see that this was forming. As it got to just southwest of Gaylord, this was not a normal northern Michigan storm.
Then, at roughly 3:45,
if you're in its path, make sure you're taking cover.
Buildings destroyed, gas leaks.
Just your west, that's where all the damage is right now that we can tell.
There are multiple reports of heavy damage around Gaylord, as well as reports of thousands without power.
In a matter of just minutes, the tornado took an unrelenting path through Gaylord, triggering a massive emergency response. 3 men would be tasked with leading that response. Otsego County Emergency Manager John Deming, Gaylord Police Chief Frank Clays, and Lieutenant Michael DeCastro from the Michigan State Police.
Those off-going day shift officers just stayed in uniform, and we waited to see what happened. From our PD, we watched as the tornado crossed north of us, and as the storm subsided enough for us to take to the streets.
And what they found could only be described as unimaginable.
Really, where it really impacted me is I'm coming south on I-75 to turn to come into Gaylord, and you can see the RV sales, and there's campers just twisted up and piled up on top of each other. And then I pull into, the main drag of M32, and there's just debris.
All right, line down, 32 in Murner. 32 eastbound shut down with debris. Looks like part of Hobby Lobby. Roof is gone.
Got multiple houses with gas leaks. I can smell gas. I'm going to need fire in a big way.
You could tell by the radio traffic that every officer believed that they were in the most hit area. Everybody needed more hands than what we had.
Get a hold of Grant Traverse County, tell them I need a box alarm engines. We have a major tornado strike here.
As calls for help came in, the injured began arriving at Otsego Memorial Hospital, which missed being in the direct path of the storm by 1 block.
We had power lines down on this road right outside the windows of the emergency department. People were watching the power lines fall across the center here, and so I don't know how we didn't sustain a direct hit.
Dr. Scott Perkle was called in to help with the sudden rush of patients.
We had sort of an all-hands-on-deck type situation where the whole hospital responded, including all of our surgeons, and a lot of staff physicians came in. So our job was really to do very rudimentary triage to determine patients that we could keep and stabilize here or patients that needed emergent transfer to a higher level of care. Mostly a lot of lacerations, a lot of blunt trauma from things that had struck patients. The most serious injury that we had here was related to a motor vehicle situation where the vehicle had been caught up in the tornado and flipped and rolled.
And the hospital was doing all of this on limited generator power.
We didn't have the opportunity to do advanced imaging here because we had no power. So we could do plain x-rays because all of our plain x-rays are done with a portable machine that's battery operated, but we were very limited in what we could actually image here in an advanced fashion. So that figured into our decision-making process of who to transport. And when you take away our ability to track who's in the emergency department, we were writing with a grease pen on windows of the emergency department to keep track of who was in the emergency department. So a lot of our electronic capabilities were taken away from us.
Back in the storm's path, a very personal search and rescue operation was getting underway.
A lot of my officers knew the houses, knew the owners of the houses that were impacted, and I remember hearing my officers calling out individuals by names as they searched through the rubble before I made it back to the command post there.
As the search began, it became clear one of the hardest hit areas was the Nottingham Forest community. It's where we would later learn 2 people lost their lives.
I mean, it was very difficult to see. It was very difficult to even get into the park just because of the amount of debris. There was some responders that had assisted in clearing out some of the roadways and such, but the impact was the next day when it was daylight, and where you could really see some of the damage and some of the overview shots from some of the UAVs that had flown up to take some pictures. Just where there was buildings, there was no buildings, and where there was probably only one trailer, there was many. It was very incredible.
I think the big impact was at the time, and the search and rescue didn't get done until 3 o'clock in the morning. The second recovery of the victim, the second fatality, wasn't recovered until about 1 o'clock. We made many attempts to completely search and research, and that's how they found the second fatality.
The storm would also leave 44 people injured.
It's amazing, 2 fatalities is too many, but it's amazing that we didn't have more. And it's easy to forget that some of those 44 injured have life-altering injuries, but it's still amazing to me that there were not more fatalities, seeing how, it was at the height of activity in the town.
As night set in, search and rescue efforts continued, with police putting a curfew in place. Lieutenant DeCastro would brief the governor as she and other state leaders arrived.
I gave her the timeline as far as the tornado. At that time, the pathway we thought was mostly just Gaylord area, and come to find out it was much longer pathway. It reached out into the county and even into Antrim County, which we did not realize until the following day, until we were able to get some eyes overhead.
It was clear the work was just beginning.
I think the real impact was around 7 o'clock when I got out on the other side of the town and I saw what it looked like. We want the community back together, and the resources came in with the governor signing a declaration. That meant that MDOT could start rolling in DNR at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I think we were just so happy with all the volunteers, and we could say thank you to all of them that came in, and the equipment that came in, the trucks and trailers and the logging equipment that came in to assist this community to put it back together as much as they could so fast over the weekend. It was just amazing. So I was non-numb after that, because we really wanted to go into the recovery modes quick as possible.
There was so much structural damage, and I had people that wanted to get stuff out of it. And I said, nothing in there is worth getting in there.
As the sun rose on the morning of May 21st, the magnitude of the damage caused by the Gaylord tornado was just setting in. But for people like Vic Ouellette, that reality was felt almost instantly.
Phone went off. It said we had a red alert, or the alert. So naturally, I went outside to look for it, because I said, this is not Oklahoma. This doesn't happen. And so we went out, and I could see the rotation coming from the west. And the rotation was really, there was no problem seeing that, but I couldn't see the funnel. So I went back in, told my wife, come on, we got to get in the basement. And at that time, the house picked up off its foundation, literally just, because I knew it was off the foundation, because I see daylight all the way around me. And then it just slammed over, and I'm watching her get hit with a drain pipe, a 4-inch, 5-inch PVC drain pipe, and a wall hit her, and a piece of somebody's garage roof. I think a particle board hit her pretty good. And the roof came down and hit me on the head.
Vic's home took a direct hit from the tornado, shifting 20 feet off the foundation.
And when I started looking around the neighborhood, it was just, I thought, what? You know, it's just, my God, is this for real?
You were telling me, as a former police officer, you've seen a lot of things, and you said this was the scariest thing.
Oh yeah, because I couldn't fight it, I couldn't wrestle it, it was out of my control. There was nothing that I could do. I just had to ride it out, say ride out the storm. There was nothing you could do.
A home Vic's family had lived in for generations was gone.
And when I looked at myself, I was covered with, looked like somebody sprayed me with a lot of sand and dirt and everything, and we were not, and I said, we got to get to the hospital, and we had to go back cross country, because the streets, the power lines were down, and just everybody was in really kind of dazed and just kind of in shock.
Not far away, Jesse Gibson's home also took a direct hit.
So I went to go pull like our box fan out of our window, and I see the tornado coming, and I'm like, oh no. So I hurried up and grabbed her and went into our hallway and shut all of our doors. And as soon as I did that, the windows exploded, and it really felt like the whole house was shaking. A cop was in the driveway to make sure we were okay, and I was trying to walk towards them, and he's like, ma'am, I need you to back up. There's a power line like right by your feet. And then right by our door was a power line that was hanging, like you could literally reach up and touch it. And there was a tree on top of our car.
Jesse's fiance was working out of town when the tornado hit.
I was working on Lake Charlevoix, and she had called me frantic and definitely a little hysterical, and I didn't understand or comprehend what she was trying to tell me and what the situation was. And she'd video called me, just showed me everything that happened, and obviously at that point I knew it was a tornado. It was legitimate. And I told my boss, we raced home, made it down East 32, past the movie theaters, right before Hobby Lobby, and I'd hiked home. Couldn't make it any further.
It was damage on a scale no one had ever seen.
You couldn't even recognize the yard or the neighborhood. It was just crazy.
And as the extent of the damage became clear, a new realization quickly set in for these tornado survivors.
Once I got over the tears, because that was the first thing I looked at, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is, I'm homeless. That was a big reality, was boom, I'm homeless. Now what?
We had stayed with our uncle that night. I want to say the town was without power for a couple days, so nobody had power. So we were essentially living like refugees. I want to say the next day we had gone to E Free Church. They had a shelter.
But out of that newfound need, stories of generosity began to emerge.
So luckily my brother-in-law and his wife said, hey, come on out and stay with us. And at that time I was the food administrator at Camp Santa Maria, which is a boys camp. And they said they had a house out there that they would rent to us. And we ended up renting that.
So we'd stayed in the motel the following night. And the next day we had heard about the hotels in the community that were offering refuge for tornado victims.
The coming days and weeks brought the difficult decision about what to do next. For Vic, there was no question. He would rebuild.
The only thing that I had a talk with my adjuster was that I will not get a mortgage to put a house back on this foundation, but I will get a mortgage to hire an attorney. Let's get it done. I don't care. I had a 1,200 square foot house. I want a 1,200 square foot house.
For Jesse and Nate, more generosity was heading their way.
Essentially, Habitat for Humanity had reached out to United Way, and Tornado Disaster Relief said, hey, we're looking for a family to donate this trailer to, a tornado victim family, and essentially top to bottom renovation. We'd met with Habitat for the first time, and we didn't really know what to expect. Our caseworker called us and said, hey, Habitat for Humanity wants to build you a house, or wants to give you a house. Well, there was dozens of people that were here volunteering, cleaning alongside with us, you know, cleaning, throwing stuff out, you know, tearing out drywall, I mean the whole 9 yards. Ripping up flooring, doing prep work, things like that, repair.
They moved into their new home just before Christmas.
It's definitely a blessing. Like, we were not expecting it out. Like, we were like very stressed out because we didn't know what we were gonna do. Essentially, like, it's just amazing how much help we got, and we were definitely not expecting this.
We are truly grateful and humble with, you know, the help that we've received. I know there's others that have received help as well, and I know there's others who still need help, I'm sure, in the community, you know, and obviously everybody's circumstance and situation was different, the living situation, but overall the community came together and given us a brand new life, a new start, a building block, stability.
Stories of generosity like that were just beginning as Gaylord began a long road to recovery.
That's one thing that I really noticed, was I didn't see any Democrats and I didn't see any Republicans. All I seen was people helping people. All that was put aside, and it was really a congealed of people coming together.
It was a whirlwind. It was a really scary time. The tornado set down at 3:45, which is a busy time for our community.
The Gaylord community has been traveling the long and winding road to recovery for the past year. Erin Mann has been taking the lead during the entire journey. She says the needs after the tornado were immediate and immense.
I think it's so unfortunate that tornado hit a manufactured home community because those survivors were already struggling as it was. Some of them, not all of them, but you know, a portion of them were. What's amazing about Gaylord is that a lot of people here have chainsaws and tractors and things to remove debris, but when gas is $6 a gallon, that's pretty challenging to do. So that's what we were seeing, is a lot of people just that might have not been keeping their head above water, and now we're barely keeping their head above water because it just was such a hard time.
Donations started coming in right away.
A lot of people were asking for help or coming in for a warm meal or, you know, getting a gas card because they didn't know where their, you know, wallet or purse was in the rubble. And I think that was really hard for some people to ask for that help. So it was a very, I think, humbling experience across the board.
Volunteers and nonprofits quickly stepped up, helping victims in the days and weeks after the tornado.
There was people that came in that, you know, had pre-existing conditions or were unwell, and you know, managing, getting their prescriptions, connecting them with their doctors, you know, making sure that we were still staying safe because you know, the mask mandate was just lifted, and, you know, trying to manage a disaster while a pandemic is still lingering is also a very interesting experience.
But with the physical needs also came needs that couldn't be measured by dollars and cents.
The traumatic experience I don't think we'll ever be able to get a pulse of. The schools that were, put on lockdown that had kids there, I think they were very scared, and there's still some people healing from that just because, myself included, having a family, or the emergency responders, or, people that were doing cleanup, we all worked really, really hard for a long time. And I think that just knowing that a collective stress, a collective trauma happened is still lingering here.
Still lingering too is the physical damage the storm left behind. Metal still clings to trees, homes with work still to be completed, and businesses to be rebuilt, all of which will take time and money. The State Disaster Assistance Program helped reimburse more than $500,000 to the city of Gaylord, Otsego County, and surrounding townships.
We had to do the basic needs, those dollars of gas, water, all of those things. But in terms of rebuilding and recovery, the long-term recovery group has committed around $400,000 to help survivors, and we're just trying to be really mindful on how we do that. I think the part that we're facing is that we're trying to respond to the residual impact of the pandemic while responding to a tornado, and this is going to take long-term recovery to do that.
And just as the memories of this storm remain fresh, so do the lessons an EF3 tornado can bring.
So I think in all honesty, what it taught us is how cohesive this group of physicians and nurses and this staff and this hospital, administration on down, I was very, very proud of that response that day, and just proud to be part of that team, because it really truly was an absolute team effort from our EMS personnel all the way down to nurses and techs, and everybody just improvised and did a great job.
The preparedness needs work. And I don't say that against anybody out there, but people have to be prepared and ready. Because what I witnessed in Gaylord was a lot of devastation. Have the tools ready, set aside, downstairs, wherever your safe place is, because you might not get that 15 minutes that we give you.
The most important thing was getting the information out, making sure the public knows that there's something bad coming through, huge tornado in this case, and make sure everyone know that you have to take shelter immediately.
What keeps me awake is, would it work? Did it work? You train and we train, and do we train enough? Do we have everything in place that we need? And what is going to be the next scenario that we may have to address in our community?
I think it's easy for people to feel like it's not a very realistic event to have happen. It's easy to be in another community and say that's an isolated incident. It will happen. It was amazing to walk through the streets and see people like ants handing off logs, like a chain of people, 100 people long, handing off logs of wood to dispose of. It was amazing.
It was something to see under a bad situation on how a community could come together that fast, try to get their people back to normal.
I get up every day and thank God that I am a resident of Gaylord, that we're living in a community that has that kind of support, that can rebound from an F3 tornado. It wasn't an F4 or F5, it didn't wipe out the whole community, but what it did was a wake-up call for a lot of people that we need to be strong. We need to stick together. And I think that's what's happening with Gaylord, is people are just sticking together, and we're going to be stronger, and I think we're going to be all right. We're going to be fine.